Thanks, Mike, for this nice presentation. Well, I'm so pleased to be here. It's just really amazing for me to present my artistic research in such an international conference with people from, well, all over the world, but with great expertise in radio. So I'm also thanks to Jan for telling me about and for inviting me to submit my paper to this conference. My presentation will be about my artistic research developed in collaboration with the cameras team at Dwingelo Radio Telescope. And at the end of it, Jan and I will present a simulated performance of slow scan television so that you can all have well, you can all appreciate how this happens during the art show. The technology that I use is, of course, moonbounce, but for my artistic project, I describe the use of moonbounce in connection with images and videos as a visual moonbounce. It's a definition that I made up for simplifying the explanation for the technology that I use. Is this next? Oh, okay, great. So I got in touch with the cameras team back in 2009. It was October 2009, and I just dropped them an email, very informally, and surprisingly, I immediately received a reply. My email was asking for the possibility of collaborating with me for an art project. And the cameras team replied enthusiastically, and especially Jan immediately embraced the idea of working with an artist. So immediately it was a great start. The use of moonbounce in art is not completely new, however. We have some great examples of artists who used moonbounce previously. Especially a composer, American composer, Pauline Oliveros. She turned 80 just this year. She is considered like a great composer in the experimental music scene. And back in 1987, she started a series of performances called Echoes of the Moon, during which she used to play her accordion and sending some sounds via a phone line to her radio amateurs collaborators, which were Dave Olin in Maine and Mark Gammer in Syracuse, New York. So after 2.5 seconds, the moon-bounced sounds of her accordion came back, mixed in with the ongoing music she kept playing. At the end of the show, she also allowed the public to participate, so people queued up for talking on the phone and listening to the echo of their own voice. And apparently, according to her description of the event, that really blew up people's mind. And I can totally relate to it because when I first heard some moonbounce sounds on the internet, also my mind was completely blew up by the fact that, by the thought that these sounds were really technically reflected by the moon's surface. Another artist who used moonbounce for a remarkable art piece, who is now in the art history just like the previous one, is Scottish artist Cathy Patterson. She, in 2007, she decoded the Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata into Morse code. And then she went to Japan, and thanks to a team of Japanese radio amateurs, she moon-bounced the Morse code, recorded it, and translated back into a music score that was played at an exhibition room on a piano. Another example of, in my opinion, very creative use of moonbounce is not this time by an artist, but by a radio amateur called Andrea Mancini, who in 2008 in Florence during the EME conference presented his work called Writing on the Moon. I will read brief excerpts from his paper, which, by the way, is still available online. He says, the actual writing is obtained using audio tones within the transmitter's audio band, so that if spectrum is used to decode, numbers and letters will appear on the screen. I needed to increase the letter size from 100 to 800 Hertz using spectrum left-to-right scan. Subsequently, I have been able to obtain the same result with up-down spectrum scan, which is the normally used mode. After this change, I was ready to write on the moon, and the first tests carried out on May 5th, 2004 were successful. The signal from the 7-meter dish was sent while the dish itself was slowly moved at a steady speed across the surface on the moon, from the east to the west limb. While experimenting, I noticed that the text had a better definition if, instead of a single tone, two were used. I called this the painter's theory. When I got in touch with the cameras team, I asked if it was possible to send to the moon some images. So Jan immediately started experimenting with the possibilities. Well, actually, no, initially it was, my request was to moonbounce some videos, some moving images. So Jan experimented a little bit with these possibilities and got back to me saying that moonbouncing video clips was not impossible, but with the technology we had available would have been much easier and perhaps more effective to moonbounce some still images. So he did not waste time, immediately started experimenting with this possibility. And this picture, which shows Jan's 3 meters dish in the back garden of his house, was sent from his home to Dwingeloo Radio Telescope back in 6th of September 2009. So this can be considered the first experiment with slow scan television and images by moonbounce. So later experiments followed. On the 26th February 2010, Jan made the first two-way contact by the moon together with Daniel Gauci in Switzerland. And I don't have a sample of that picture, but that was the first successful two-way contact with a picture that looked still quite similar to the original. This one is one of the first images that were successfully moonbounced. It's for me, I always show it in my presentations because it is for me symbolic of what visual moonbounce means to me. It is, in fact, I consider moonbounce as the first form of space travel. It is the way. It is a way. The first way humankind touched a celestial body by means of radio waves. And by sending a picture to the moon and back, people get the feeling of being virtual astronauts. So they often appreciate seeing the journey to the moon and back. The idea of moonbouncing images is not new. In the history of moonbounce, there has been at least one great example of images bounced off the moon. The US Navy launched the moon relay project on the 28th January 1960. And this picture of a US carrier was bounced from Honolulu to Washington, D.C. by the moon, and as a facsimile. So for the reception, they used several teletypes printer. And with Jan, we were discussing the fact that although this is a moonbounce picture, the definition seems to be excellent. And Jan very rightly said that the reason being is the US Navy cannot afford to lose any data after transmission. And in my art project, of course, we don't worry about that. Actually, I'm very pleased when we lose some data or when the data get contaminated by other information. That's part of the thrill, of course, and it makes the images a lot more interesting, in my opinion. So the software we use for moon bouncing images is the slow scan television. I mean, I don't have to tell you about that. I'm sure you know a great deal about it. And I learned a lot through Jan about moon bounce, of course, and technology involved. The slow scan television converts the colors into sounds, which are then sent to the moon as radio waves. So if we take this example of a red color, thanks, Jan. There is a sound, the sound that is produced by the slow scan television software while converting this red color. Okay, it goes on for about a minute. And it doesn't change, that's the problem. Well, that was, of course, the sound of the image before being moon bounced, and this is the same color. As you can see, it contains a lot of other information, and the noise, for me, it's the really artistic aspect of these images because, well, I'll tell you in a minute. This is the moon bounce sound of the image. I hope you were able to listen to the slight change of pitch in the sounds. There were some distortions, of course, that were not in the previous sound. But as I was explaining earlier, the noise for me is an important aspect of these images. It is the sign that those radio signals have traveled approximately 800,000 kilometers. It also shows traces of the lunar libration, Doppler effect, the fact that the moon's surface is, of course, a sphere and not a great reflector. So these images, for me, are rich of information, astronomical, and, well, also, I would say philosophical, but well. Anyway, so when we realized that moon bouncing images was something we could do easily, well, relatively easily, and in that the technology was pretty reliable. Jan, together with our collaborators, which are Bruce Alas in Brazil, here he is, and Howard Ling here in the UK. Hi, Howard. Then Daniel Gauci in Switzerland. Well, that was the team that now is expanded. So with this initial team, we started performing my art project, which is called Optics. Here you see the title, Moon Bounced, of course. The title was borrowed from the important essay written by Newton in 1704 about reflection and refraction of the light. The reason why I chose this title is because I liked the connection between the light spectrum and the fact that radio waves are reflected and refracted by the moon surface during moon bounce. The project has been performed now several times. I'm not sure many, but many times we perform it, of course. We can only perform it about 1 or 2 days per month. This picture was taken during a show at the Amsterdam Planetarium in November 2010. Basically, during the show, I introduced the technology because most people don't know anything about it. So after, I remember the very first event when we performed optics, people didn't know what was going on. They never heard about moonbounce. They only saw these pictures coming in a very bad quality from somewhere. And so I decided to give a brief introduction before each live event. After that, Jan and the camera's team appear on a video call. We use a software called TeamViewer that allows us to keep this live connection with the radio telescope. And after that, we have the proper performance with the images. So the images are sent to the moon and back in real time and projected in the exhibition space as this happens. So it's always thrilling because there are so many technical issues involved that there is always the risk that something goes wrong, but so far we've been several times in trouble, but we've been always able to perform this event successfully. At the end of the show, we also have a Q&A with the public, which usually gets very interested about moonbounce, and so it's always a great way to share this with a larger public. Also, something else I forgot to say, that at the end of the show, I print the moonbounce pictures. I sign them. I write a message on the back of the card saying that the image has truly traveled to the moon and back, and give it back to the public. The images are very often submitted by the audience themselves, so they are directly engaged with what happens. One of my favorite performances is the last, before the closing of the dish for the restoration. We performed optics during Global Astronomy Month 2012 in April, on the 28th of April. Global Astronomy Month is it's a yearly event organized by Astronomers Without Borders. It's an international collective based in California, but with people collaborating from all over the world. And for this performance, I asked people via the Global Astronomy Month website to send us pictures for the live event. So people submitted pictures from all around the world, and we performed optics from the inside the cabin of the radio telescope, and we web streamed the event so people from all around the world could actually follow it in real time. It's also recorded on Ustream, so if you haven't watched it, you can see the link in the paper. And you're welcome to have a look. So for this event, we worked with a new team, a Polish team called Aris Polska, that joined very enthusiastically. They managed to upgrade their equipment in a very short time, and they also wrote a very nice contribution to the paper, which you will find on the DVD. And the Polish team also created a special call sign, especially for the event. It's SN 2012 Global Astronomy Month. This was one of the pictures that at the end was moonbounced. We received about 100 pictures, and we had to select only 10 of them because of time restrictions. This is the moonbounce picture. And also we received lots of portraits. This is a portrait of an astrophysicist in Tennessee. His name is Joe Smith, and with his daughter Crystal. And he was very enthusiastic of being part of the project. And this is his portrait. I printed it and sent it back to him as a postcard, and he was very enthusiastic about it. So he sent me another card with a thank you message, which I treasure a lot. Also, the Polish team had a great idea of sending together with the printed images a certificate, which in fact certifies that the image has effectively traveled to the moon and back. Some people ask me, well, how do I know if this picture has really traveled to the moon and back or if it's just been changed with Photoshop? Well, this is a proof. We put our signature on a kind of statement at the bottom of the statement saying that the image has really gone to the moon and back. So, this is a still image from what I consider my first attempt to send moving images to the moon and back. It's a still image from a video called Le Voyage dans la Lune, which is a French title for a trip to the moon. The original pictures are 26 images of the lunar phases that were offered for the project by British astronomer Michael Oates, which I believe is based at the Manchester Astronomical Society. And sometimes back in September 2011, Jan moonbounced those pictures, and I joined them together into an animation. And this is one of the still images. I hope we will be able to one day moonbounce also moving images by the moon, working perhaps with larger, collaborating with larger telescopes. Well, maybe in the near future. In the future of visual moonbounce, I hope there will be a lot of other experiments. Personally, I'm involved with this idea of moonbounce in films, but also I'm working with, well, now only at a very initial level with the idea of holographic images and 3D effects on moonbounced visual data. Jan also, together with Howard and Bruce, have been experimenting with improving the actual appearance of this image. This picture of André Kuipers, the Dutch astronaut, was moonbounced using Robot 72, which is the mode we normally use for the live show because it takes 72 seconds for the conversion of the sound into the image, and it's quite, well, it's a long, not too long time for the live show. But the following one is, of course, much better resolution, but it takes 110 seconds, so a little bit longer. But it seems to be a very good compromise in case we will need to get better quality images. And this, I think, is the best image moonbounced so far. Jan and Howard used Scotty DX, which takes 269 seconds. So Jan mastered his ability of adjusting manually the Doppler shift in this image. So I would like to conclude this presentation by also showing the images of the dish that are involved in our collaboration. You saw Jan's 3 meters dish earlier on. You now know very well Dwingle Radio Telescope as well, and but here is Bruce. This is the dish of Bruce Alas in Brazil. It stands on a 28th floor building in Brazil, in São Paulo. And you can see more pictures also in the DVD. This dish is Daniel Gauci's dish in Switzerland. This is the Polish team, Aris Polska. And finally, Howard Link. Howard has been one of the most reliable collaborators so far. So I would like to personally thank Howard and Bruce, who are here, and of course Jan, and the Polish team, and Daniel, who made possible this journey to the moon and back by the images. Okay, thank you. Now we have the live, the recorded performance of. We will show some pictures as if they will be, as if they were in the live performance. And if you want to ask any question to myself or Jan, please do that while we run this recorded presentation.
No problem. Does it always?
So Jan is now feeding the sounds of the moon-bounced pictures from his MP3 player into the software, the slow scan television software.
We can magnify it and make it even bigger. And now you see it as if it was coming from the moon, line by line.
Yes.
Luckily, you don't hear it because that's a bit annoying sound all the time, bleep, 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 but this is...
Yes, this is one of the first pictures we moon-bounced. At the beginning of the project, I was experimenting with the idea of moon-bouncing only the 7 colors of the light spectrum. So I had only images of the 7 colors. So it was a very, very abstract performance. Oh, I forgot to say that while we were performing optics with the colors, there was also a composer who, his name is Enrique Tomas. He used to play during the live show, so it was a little bit different from what we do now.
I had one question. Have you tried or thought about transmitting images during periods of mutual minimum libration between you and Howard, where you might find the distortion characteristics on the path quite different and might add a new aspect to how the images appear?
Good question. Of course, it comes from you as a libration expert. But no, we didn't consider it. Of course, we had some good condition with the moon very close and the moon a little bit further away. But with those signal strengths, we have done several pictures on several occasions. And when you look through those files, you cannot really see big differences, only when we shift big power levels. But low libration, it's an interesting thing. As soon as the dish is up, we're going to experiment with that, because that's maybe they become much better if libration is low. I don't know.
I think this is on 1296.
Yes.
If you hit it right, you could probably get several seconds of, completely clean signal. Maybe even 10. It's for about half an hour.
Yeah. So not 72 seconds.
So what you might see is bands of the picture which are really good.
Yeah.
And then a fade.
Yeah.
So it would have a completely different appearance. And if you were to do it through a minimum, you could see the picture change before, middle, and after. So just a thought.
Would be great.
That's a great idea. Yeah. We should try definitely that.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yes, actually, this picture was sent from someone watching the program on an Italian radio. Was an Italian radio program called Rai Tunes. People sent some pictures, and we, of course, chose this one because, it's very special.
And in fact, Daniela made a print for me, sent it to me, and it's now up in my living room. This one.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Tilina, another friend of us from Astronomers Without Borders, made a T-shirt with it. So it's very, very nice picture.
Maybe we see a new program, Joe. Joe? I'm over here, Joe. Maybe we see a new program soon called JTP for picture.
Okay, this picture now is still, well, maybe you can already recognize. It's a still image from a French film, the first science fiction film in history by French director Georges Méliès. It was restored just last year. They found a color print somewhere in Spain, and the film is in black and white originally, but they also found this color print that was restored, and I just wanted to see the look of this iconic image in the history of film as it's after Moonbounce. And it's called Le Voyage dans la Lune, a trip to the moon. So.
I have a question. Has anybody actually sent moving video to the moon and back yet, by any mode?
I know that November 9 Alpha Bravo did about 15 years ago. We sent a video.
Yeah.
And can we see anywhere this result, or?
I don't know. I don't think he ever published it.
Okay.
And that was video?
No, slow scan television.
Slow scan
Oh,
television?
no, I thought about
okay.
moving image
Right.
as I was asking.
Well, maybe I will, if you don't mind, I would like to ask you some information, because I always add this information on my presentation.
So nobody's done it digitally then, or no?
But SSTV.
Yeah, you need a very, very big dish for yeah.
I think the first one was K3NSS and the Pack Rats people. Is Rick here? PGP, K3 PGP, PGP. That was the one, yeah. And K3NSS, and I think that was about 74, 75, somewhere around about there. We could probably dig it up from the records.
And did they good?
Yes, that was slow scan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did they get good pictures? Oh, okay. But it was the first try.
Anyone saw was something that looked like a frame. There was no pictures. There was a group at MIT that was interested in that, and they were transmitting, and Jay was involved with that, and myself, a lot of us, and to my knowledge, there was never any successful. Actually, I guess we were transmitting. I remember that because I ruined one of my finals.
Well, there's a challenge for EMI 2014. We'll see a paper with moving videos, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so.
But of course, then you need.
Sorry, don't shout. Put your hands up.
Activity that was related. There was a group in Japan, and both Jay and myself were involved in it. They put together a theme park, and it was an artistic theme park or an exhibit at one of the. I have the tapes for that if you're interested. And they produced this wall at the time of TV sets, and they had pictures of young children who were saying the world needs love, and we basically, I think it was Jay transmitted to me, I received, and we tape recorded these echoes, and then they did this at the theme park in Japan.
Okay, great. Only 60 seconds, so it looks we have made it.
Yes, yes. Okay, great.
Any more comments?
Well.
No, I think it's time, and thank you for our nice presentation to Diana
Thank you.
and Jan as well. And